My name's Leslie Riddick. I'm a journalist and sort of campaigner on various things, and also very interested in the Nordic countries, all of whom have fairly impressive outcomes on every blinking aspect of life, and all of whom, like most of the world, have children going to school at 6 or 7 with a very well established kindergarten stage first. I've just had a film about Finland going around Scotland, and the education system has been analysed in some detail. So that's kind of my interest in all of this. Um, we have a hustings tonight, more to the point, and it's great that actually somebody from each of the parties has come. I've done a hustings for a couple of years for Upstart, and I think at the beginning we didn't quite manage to get everybody to take this seriously, to be blunt. I hope we're past that stage. So, what I'm proposing is just to give you a wee lowdown on the panelists here in alphabetical order, so there's nobody getting annoyed about anything, and then we'll just try and get each person to speak for a couple of minutes about what's in their manifesto about the early years. So, Audrey Dempsey is the Reform UK candidate for Glasgow, Easterhouse, and Springburn. Her professional background is in addiction support and frontline services that support vulnerable people. She built her own charitable service in 2017 that supported 60,000 people to date and got a Points of Light award from Downing Street and a British Empire Medal for contributions to the vulnerable people of Glasgow. Ross Greer is the Scottish Greens candidate for West Scotland and the Scottish Greens co-leader. When he was first elected in 2016, Ross was the youngest ever MSP, and I'm sure he's waiting, pining for the day when some young dude gets elected so that this description of him is cast into the history books. He previously served as a member of the Scottish Youth Parliament and worked for Yes Scotland in the run-up to the independence referendum. Thomas Heald is a Scottish Conservative candidate for Dunfermline. He's a Stirling councillor and the Tory spokesperson on children and young people on the council. Before being elected, he worked in hospitality, social media marketing, and has worked for two MSPs, latterly the Scottish Conservative spokesperson for children, young people, and keeping the promise. Fulton MacGregor is SNP candidate for Coatbridge and Chryston since 2016. In Parliament, he sits on the Criminal Justice Committee. He's been a member of 14 cross-party groups and currently convenes the shared parenting ones, the future of football in Scotland, social work and adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. Two more folk. Martin Whitfield is a Scottish Labour candidate for South Scotland and Shadow Minister for Children and Young People. He started work as a lawyer, then retrained to become a teacher at Prestonpans Primary. He's been chair of Prestonpans Community Council and a member of the General Teaching Council for Scotland's board and an activist in the EIS Teachers Union. He served as East Lothian's MP, but then joined Holyrood as a list MSP in 2021, where he's been Scottish Labour's spokesperson for children and young people. And Andy Williamson is Scottish Lib Dem's candidate for Edinburgh South Western. He's an Edinburgh-based business owner with a background in education and youth mental health, having previously run an education company in Seattle supporting neurodivergent students, and he co-founded a private mental health practice for teenagers and young people. So if this was a real event, I would love to say to everybody, welcome your panel and invite everybody to give a big round of applause. But let's just assume that everybody's waving their hands and loves you to bits because you haven't spoken yet, right? So let's just start off then in order, in that alphabetical order, if you're all right with it. And it would be great to hear what your party thinks about the early years. Audrey, are you going first?
Can you hear me all right? Yeah. Am I
Yep.
muted? Yeah. Okay, so my name's Audrey Dempsey, and as Leslie said, my background has been for many years in community addiction, in which role I worked alongside families who were in child protection and fully understand, just the need and the importance of early years childcare. Now, Reform hasn't set out a rigid childcare plan for this as yet. It's still a work in progress. And the reason for that is that we feel on feedback from the research that we have done speaking to families and providers, that today it seems to have been overpromised but under-delivering. So the priority for us isn't about, just overpromising now. It's about fixing what's broken first and not layering, more promises on top of that are undeliverable. The outcomes haven't improved significantly, from what we can see from, the big expansion, the £1 billion expansion. We're still hearing that providers are struggling and parents can't access what's been promised. So I think from our point of view, childcare is tricky in terms that it's not a one size fits all. It has been deemed to be a one size fits all for many years, and that's maybe why it's not working for families, because now it's rigidly designed around your kind of 9 to 5 working pattern. And now families, that doesn't suit all families and they can't access employment for those hours. So rather than jump in and promise you something that we possibly cannot deliver, or it's not going to work for the majority of the population, we are still working through that. We are working closely with families and providers to try and find a plan that can suit most people, because you're never going to please everybody, but most people, a plan that actually works and will deliver the outcomes that people expect it to. Thank you.
I'm probably going to just jump on everybody a little bit to try and specify things. And I should have stated the obvious, which is Upstart is a campaign that exists to try to have a later school starting age that actually fits in with the majority of countries in the world, which sends kids to school at 6 and 7. So, Audrey, in an ideal world, do you think a later school starting age is good?
Me personally, no. I would say the census across the party at the minute is a bit mixed, but I mean, it's not just about delaying the children from where we sit in Leslie, it's about investing in the providers. I think a lot of these countries, they have really well degreed, providers, and they really invest in their staff. We don't have that. And from what we're gathering, the feedback we're gathering at the minute is staff in early years are really struggling, particularly with the lack of support for kids with assisted learning needs and things like that. So we have to look at all of that. I don't think it's just about delaying the age of the child and pushing them back, because there are providers who are stating that kids are, they're ready for school actually before the age of 5, and they're getting unsettled in nursery because they're keen, they're eager, and they are advanced enough to start learning at that age. So again, to say that it's a one size fits all, that just doesn't work for me. Sorry.
Okay, you can see that I'm struggling a wee bit with a cough here, so it might be some short questions. Who is second in this list? Ross.
Thanks, so thanks, Leslie. How long do you want me to speak for just for this opening one? You know what I'm like. Oh, 3 minutes. Cool. Yeah, I'll cap it to that. Thanks. And evening, everybody. Thanks very much to Upstart for organising this. Straight to the point, the Scottish Greens believe in a kindergarten stage between the ages of 3 and 6 and a formal primary school starting age of 7. That's the headline policy in the relevant chapter of our manifesto there, which is called Let's Demand Better. We know that learning through play, developing social skills, developing emotional skills and capacity, that is what's absolutely critical for children at that young stage. Scotland is a total outlier in European terms in having 4.5-year-olds in primary school classrooms. And I have a huge amount of respect for primary teachers. We know that teachers in P1, 2 and 3 are very often delivering play-based learning, but it is a square pegs, round holes situation because the system is not designed for that. And what we need is a system that actually meets the needs of the children in it, and follows the strongest evidence of what works for them. Fundamentally, this is about getting the joy for learning back. If kids have that really positive first experience of learning, and kindergarten stage, this is education. It's not just childcare. This is education. Children are learning. If they have a positive experience at that age, it sets them up for a much more positive experience throughout the rest of their time at school. Again, all the evidence of that is very obvious. So we would absolutely push for that kindergarten stage. In the immediate term, there are changes we want to make to the childcare system. So, for example, the 11:40 hours that currently kicks in at 3, with the kindergarten stage, we would have 11:40 hours kick in at 2. It shouldn't kick in the term after a child's birthday, it should kick in the week after. It's not fair that families whose wee one was born in March or April are paying thousands of pounds more than those whose wee one was born in August, September. So we would make sure it kicks in week after rather than term after. We would scrap standardized assessments. We think that they are not a helpful way of measuring children's knowledge, their abilities. They're a data collection exercise that causes a lot of stress, and they're not actually helping good quality learning and teaching in our schools. We would also move away from homework in primary schools. Still recognise the need for it in secondary, but again, if we want children to feel a sense of joy and enthusiasm about learning, they shouldn't feel like it follows them wherever that formal schooling follows them wherever they go and that they can't escape it. Children learn wherever they are. They don't just have to be in a classroom to learn. And when you're after school, there's all sorts of learning through social activities, just going out to play, after school clubs, etc. as well. So that's why we would say we would actually have the kindergarten stage, scrap standardized tests, but we would also have no homework in primary schools as well. Fundamentally, we would also have a system that trusts teachers. I think a lot of the problems in Scottish education are rooted in the fact that the system doesn't trust the people actually delivering education. If we trusted our teachers far more, trusted their professional judgment, I think we would be able to resolve a lot of the problems that we've got in the system.
Right, thanks for that, Ross. Is what you're offering costed?
So the childcare policies, yes, the kindergarten stage, obviously, we're talking about a shift rather than something brand new. So kindergarten, we already clearly have a primary one. So it'd be about primary one kids being in it's a different style of learning, but there's not particular costs associated as such. The childcare policies, yes, so that expansion of 11:40 to 2-year-olds, it's hard to model because you don't know what the level of uptake is going to be. If it was 100% uptake, you would be talking about something in the region of £600 million a year, which is we already spend more than that on the existing childcare offer. It wouldn't be 100% uptake, though. We know from evidence of the 3 and 4-year-olds in Scotland, but also other systems that provide it for 2-year-olds. Naturally, for a lot of families, you want to provide them with flexibility. They're not going to take that up. So realistically, the cost is probably going to be a lot less than that. But at absolute most, you're in the region of £600 million for the expansion to 2-year-olds that we were talking about.
Right. Okay. Now, who is next, actually? It's Thomas. Thomas.
Thanks, Leslie. Good evening, and thank you for inviting me to take part, represent the Scottish Conservatives. As you mentioned, I'm a councillor in Stirling, a candidate in Dunfermline, and an advisor at Holyrood. But first and foremost, I'm a dad of 3 young children. Like so many parents across Scotland, my wife and I juggle work, childcare, and family life every day. I know how difficult it can be to find childcare that is affordable, flexible, and actually available when you need it. Too many families are locked out by high costs or patchy provision, particularly in rural areas, and too many parents are forced to scale back their careers because the system simply isn't working for them. That's why we believe that childcare must be both an education policy and an economic one. Scottish Conservatives, in our manifesto, I'll also flash manifestos since we're doing it, we are proposing to expand funded childcare to working families with children from 9 months old, giving parents more choice, flexibility, and support to stay in or return to work. But expansion alone isn't enough. We also need to fix the funding model. Right now, it doesn't work for parents, providers, or the workforce. Funding goes directly to local authorities, but doesn't always follow the child. That creates real barriers. For example, many families living in Dunfermline and other parts of Fife work in Edinburgh, but often can't access their entitlement across council boundaries. That simply isn't good enough. On the kindergarten model, I personally think there's real value in the principle behind it. Giving children more time to develop socially, emotionally, and through play is incredibly important. I see that with my eldest daughter, who's in P1, who is thriving in a play-based environment. But we also have to balance this with the realities families face today. Whilst our manifesto doesn't propose wholesale system change at this stage, we are committed to 2 pilot schemes based on the Swedish model, one rural and one urban, to assess the impact on a child's experiences and to prepare for potential change. Because I think it's quite important that we bring parents with us on this, I think you get a lot of people that are quite anxious, or my child's not starting school till 6, 7, what do I do with the pressures that are facing them? So I think there's really a conversation to be had over the next term of Parliament to get the right model in place. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got to say, I am struggling a wee bit here. So, Kate, you might have to get a wee bit on standby here in case I just keep coughing. Apologies for that. Thomas, just as a matter of interest then, I mean, obviously from your own experience, you've got, which is interesting to hear, dad of 3, respect. But your party, are they actually sold on the idea that kids starting school later and having a kindergarten stage is a good thing, but it's just difficult to persuade the parents? Or do you not absolutely accept that's a good combination?
I think without revealing too much of internal conversations in the party, it's taking a long time to get to this point. There are colleagues who are for a kindergarten model. My boss is very much in favour of it, but there are others that are not. And we settled on the 2 pilot schemes, which we announced at our conference a few months ago, to really assess the impact. And I'm hoping through that, if we were to come to that point to implement them, that we could convince colleagues to come along with us on the journey a little bit.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that. Fulton, fire away.
Thank you, Leslie, and thanks to everybody here for coming along and to Upstart for the invitation. Perhaps before I come to what's in the SNP manifesto, I will address the issue of kindergarten, of course, which is the main issue that Upstart exists to promote, and put on record, which I don't mind doing, my disappointment that the SNP manifesto does not include a commitment to kindergarten in this parliamentary term. This is despite my own personal best efforts to try and get it there, and I know actually the Cabinet Secretary for Education and the outgoing Minister Natalie Dawn both also were supportive of that as well. I think it should be recognised though that a kindergarten stage is SNP party policy, which I'm very pleased about, and just because it isn't in the manifesto does not mean that it isn't something that can be taken up in the next parliamentary session. And I certainly, if re-elected, would be very keen to pursue that. I think this is a parliament where we need to make a real move on a kindergarten phase. I was really delighted to see that both the Liberal Democrat and the Green manifestos have got a commitment in there, and that suggests to me, with what's been said there, what we've heard from Thomas a minute ago, and what I've just said about it being SNP party policy, that I think actually we're now converging on a real cross-party consensus on this issue. And I think that we need to whoever's elected or re-elected to the next parliament really need to make those moves to make that happen. And I know that Upstart will be there to support all members, new and returning, with that. And I hope that Audrey, who spoke for the forum there, I hope that the members who aren't convinced yet can be convinced that it isn't about simply being ready for school or otherwise. It's about the right model and the actual issues that it can help to tackle. So I just wanted to put that on the record about kindergarten. Folk will know that I've fought continuously for a kindergarten phase throughout my parliamentary time, and if I'm re-elected for Coatbridge and Chryston in 2 weeks' time, I'll be continuing to do that, so I can give that commitment. Like Thomas before me, I've got 3 kids myself, a 12-year-old, an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, so not going to let Thomas steal the thunder there with that one. So I've got that experience as well, and I see the different things that happen within schools in the early years education system, both personally and as an MSP. And there is areas where I think that our schools are doing absolutely fantastic. My oldest boy's actually on a residential trip just now, and he's having the time of his life up at Lochie Lane near Fort William. These are absolutely brilliant things. And there's areas where I think there needs to be improvement as well. I'm actually not a fan of homework at primary school level or of testing at primary school level, so that backs into the backs up my stance on kindergarten. In terms of the SNP manifesto, we do have some good commitments in there. There's already been discussion about the early years provision for families, so that the SNP are committing to increasing that to 9 months right through, and that would be all year round. So I think that's something that Audrey mentioned, that flexibility. I think that's something that's recognised in our current package, but also what we're offering in this manifesto. And also the other one thing I'll highlight, because I know that it's I know that time's short, is the new bag for primary 1 children. I think that this is it's one of these policy ideas where it's a wee bit of a mixed reviews, I think, because there is an idea that maybe we could have spent the money elsewhere, and I think there is maybe other ways we could have tried to address those attainment gaps. But then at the same time, when you represent a very deprived area of multiple deprivation, such as I do in Coatbridge and Chryston, it's going down very well on the doors, for example, and people are saying that this would be a real help when their children go to school, or would have been a real help when their children was in P1, and many people seen it very similar to the baby box provision. So I think that is a policy that we can continue to develop as well, should the SNP be returned to government. And I think I've probably spoke long enough there, Leslie, but hopefully that's a wee flavour of where I'm coming from. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Fulton. It's astonishingly honest of you to say that your manifesto is disappointing to you in terms of no kindergarten, and also to praise the Lib Dems.
Not the whole manifesto, just the omission of kindergarten.
On this point.
Yes.
But what's the problem? I mean, I was at the conference when the policy was passed a couple of years ago. So what's the stickiness? Is it a debate still about the desirability of a later start in kindergarten stage, or is it the cash?
The honest answer is I don't know. I had worked hard for it to be in the manifesto, and I was told when I was getting updates on that it was being actively considered, and then I never got a final update until the manifesto was launched, which is right, and neither was the MD who's pushing for things to be in the manifesto, because obviously within that last week or so, what was going to be in it was obviously been held quite tightly. So that's right, and that's the way that it should be. But the honest answer is I don't know. I do believe there is a general consensus within the SNP that kindergarten is the way to move forward. I feel that probably rather than it being the 2 options you gave me there, it's more about, I think perhaps it's maybe not seen as being as of an urgent concern as other areas. And you can understand maybe why that perception would be there. However, it's going to be down to me and to others who believe in a kindergarten more strongly that actually there isn't more of an urgent need, because by bringing in a kindergarten stage, you can actually tackle many of the issues which cabinet secretaries and others have to stand up and talk to on a regular basis. I think as well that it's not a quick fix. A kindergarten stage is not a quick fix for things. So from all political party point of view, there's probably something that's not as attractive about that, because you're not going to be able to sort things out tomorrow. By bringing in a kindergarten phase, you're looking at a 10-15 year period before you start seeing the real results of that. So we need to do it. We need to do it this year.
10 years. Okay, right. Thank you for being so honest, Fulton. Right, Martin, I think.
Honest and in a recorded hustings as well. So congratulations, Fulton. Again, can I just echo others and thank Upstart for the invite tonight. And actually, it's lovely to address a hustings that's talking about a much more specific area, in this case, our early years and early years development, rather than sort of all things to everyone, because it allows us to get sort of beyond the inch deep paint and get down into the important discussions. So I don't have a manifesto to flash in front of you, but I do know that its title, Scotland Needs Change, is a really important element that underpins all of it, because nowhere is change more important than the way that we support children and families in those earliest years of life. In Scotland Needs Change, we're setting out a simple and powerful commitment to give every child the best possible start in life, because we recognize the foundational importance of those really -9 up until 6, 7 years old. And it's not just for learning, but to echo others, it is about the well-being, the confidence, the development of the child that will possibly not see fruition until beyond teenage years. But those experiences in the early years sit there as seeds that can either grow into great flowers or wither. And at the minute, far too many of our young children are seeing that opportunity wither. So our focus is going to be on quality, accessibility, flexibility of early learning, but also that childcare, rather than seeking a delay in when children start school, because the right time to start school is when the child is ready to start school. And, you know, fully aware of the ongoing debate about raising, quote, the formal school starting age, and indeed whether or not we have a compulsory kindergarten stage. But that's not what our manifesto is promising. We're talking very clearly that we need to work within the current system, retain the existing school starting age while ensuring the early years provision is properly supporting each individual child's development, and indeed the most important element, the readiness to learn. We're seeking to prioritise cutting the cost of childcare, because we've already talked, others have already talked about how that is so much of a barrier. But we also want to improve the flexibility through the funding so that it follows the child, so that with those children who may not have diagnosed but do have identifiable ASN early on, they can see additional provision. We have already talked in our manifesto about the 2 weeks of funded summer care, breakfast clubs and primary schools, because these aren't just abstract policies or offers. They're real deliverable measures that the government can be judged against achieving. And it will make life easier, both for parents and for children. Our commitment to back early years practitioners and school staff, properly recognise and acknowledge their professionalism. And we talked before this about teachers not being part of early years, which is a great disappointment and a loss, which was occasioned in the not too distant past. And we need to promote an educational reform so that we meet children where they are, not where their simple age expects them to be. Where they are on the curve is not important. It's who they are as individuals. We need to make sure they start school not hungry, hence the breakfast clubs, not unsupported, and most importantly, not left behind, because I think this is what a lot of young children are finding, that they seem to be outside of the mainstream within school, and they feel they're getting left behind. They become disengaged, and that multiplies through primary school to make that transition into high school an incredibly difficult experience, where we see a not insignificant number of children starting, particularly after COVID, to disengage from school. And that speaks to the brilliant professional of our youth work sector to allow those to come in. So it's about honing in and using expertise and professionalism that we've got. So the manifesto with regard to early years is rooted in delivery, it's rooted in fairness, it's rooted in opportunity for young people and families. And it's for families, you know, for children that deserve genuinely that best start in Scotland, which is something we've talked about for the best part of 19 years, and I'm not sure that we're seeing. And that's the change that Scottish Labour wants to offer. I'm sure you have great fun picking apart everyone else's manifesto in due course, Leslie.
Well, let's have a wee pick now then, Martin. Well, why have you not tackled the starting age of 4 and 5? Do you believe in it?
We haven't tackled it because the structures that we find our education and early years system is are reaching a really challenging part where we're not sure whether it's there for childcare, we're not sure if it's there for early learning. What we have advocated in our manifesto, and we are very strong about, is that play-based learning that we've talked about, because play is pedagogy, it is learning, it is the experiences that we see. And certainly when I speak to nursery providers and very early years providers, there is, I think, evidence starting to show that our young population under the age of 3 are showing far less signs of the COVID characteristics that we've seen in our generations above that. So thankfully...
Martin, can I just jump in? Sorry to interrupt. But do you basically accept then that that a play-based, well, curriculum sounds like the wrong word, but there should be a play-based curriculum learning up to the age of 7? You're just quibbling about whether it's in nurseries or in conventional schools.
I don't think we're quibbling as to where it is. I think the pedagogy of play-based learning is massively important and is right to be there. I think one of the challenges that is seen in the kindergarten model is whether or not people are actually talking about completely new physical institutions or replacements to our nurseries or replacements to P1, P2. Whereas what Labour is talking about is blending those transitions from nursery through to, end of P2, even into P3, even later for some of our children, that the learning is structured around a play-based model, which is important.
Right. Thanks for that. Andy Williamson for the Scottish Lib Dems then. What's your take?
Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who's spoken so far. It's been really enlightening. I think it's nice to actually have some sort of cross-party consensus on this. I will also, for the record, flash the manifesto and declare my interest in, I have 2 children as well. I have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. So they're right in the midst of all of this. So I have a P2 age child. I'm very proud of the Lib Dems position on this because we've been consistent supporters of the Upstart campaign and of a Nordic-style play-based learning model. So it was in our 2021 manifesto. It's in our 2026 manifesto. And it's nice to hear, what Russ was saying and what Thomas was saying. Fulton, I really appreciate what you had to say. It would have been nice to see it in the manifesto as a proper sort of commitment, especially, you've been in power for 19 years. So I wonder why you've had this Damascene conversion now at this stage. But in general, I think that something that we need to clarify is that play-based learning is not separate from learning. This is fundamental. I actually briefly during COVID ran a preschool when I was living in the US, and I've seen it firsthand about the way that children's brains develop. Academics is only one slice of learning for young children. And the benefits of play-based learning gives them the ability to learn in a variety of different ways. They develop their social skills, they develop their cognitive skills, they develop their physical skills, they develop their interpersonal skills. So I'm a very firm personal believer in this, and I think this is a fantastic campaign. More broadly, I think there's other things in the Lib Dem manifesto that pertain to early years education. So agree with Ross about abolishing those P1 standardized tests. I think that is just a really damaging thing for really young kids to be doing. We want to really, I think, focus on bringing childhood back into schools because so much of it's focused on actually testing. My personal campaign that I've been waging in Edinburgh is about removing smartphones from schools. I think we've had a really big over-reliance on smartphones and on digital devices. And I think that diminishes childhood. That was something that was actually referenced in the PISA report about the importance of smartphones in damaging children's learnings. The Lib Dems, we also want to improve pupil equity funding. That is funding that goes directly to head teachers to allow them to make decisions based on their schools and what they see in front of them. So we want to inflation-proof that because that's been diminishing as inflation has increased. And we want to make it permanent so that head teachers can actually make long-term decisions about their schools. They're not having to make year-on-year decisions. And then something as well that I think more people are affected by than the media represents is the funding follows the child policy. So we've seen a lot of cross-border issues around people being unable to access childcare in different council areas. I mean, that's a factor of funding follows the child having sort of grey areas and not being explicitly worded. But also it's a reflection of cuts to local government as well. So local government have been trying to make cuts to childcare provision, and they've done it by cutting access for people outside of those council areas. So we want to fix that, and we want to get the councils back together and re-establish that so that people are able to access childcare across council borders. So I think that's it. There's a lot more in there, and I'm sure we'll get to it in the next little bit of time, but that's everything for now. Leslie, I think you're still muted.
Indeed. Oldest trick of the book, isn't it? Well, thanks very much for that. So actually, just do you think, Andy, that I mean, as I think if it was Ross or I'm trying to remember who it was who started the old olive branch being kind of cast across the panel there, but it would seem that the Lib Dems and Greens are kind of the leaders of the pack in this respect. Are
In
you?
every respect.
I know, hang on now. Which will be, which might maybe a point of sadness for Fulton and Martin, but still, would you be leading on this then in some way? Because you would need to make this a priority, and I appreciate it all depends on the arithmetic, doesn't it? But still, would it be a priority for your parties, Ross?
I think the short answer is yes. I mean, as you said, it depends on what the arithmetic is, and also depending on priority for what it's the kind of policy that you couldn't really deliver through a single round of annual budget negotiations, for example. It would need to be a multi-year commitment in a programme for government. It's certainly the kind of policy that we would want to champion and to really push, and hopefully we would be in a good position to be able to persuade, let's say, assume the current polls are correct, an SNP-led government, I would certainly hope that we would be able to have a positive influence in bringing them on side for this, because we've kind of been stuck in Scottish education for quite a while now. There's been a real lack of big ideas, or well, the ideas have been outside and they've just not been let in the room. Since the move to Curriculum for Excellence 15-ish years ago now, it feels like things have got a bit stuck, and I think we are at a point where we need another big round of reform, and where there is this growing, even if there's not a party political consensus, there's a growing external consensus around the need for a kindergarten stage. To me, that's the obvious next big reform that we need to see in Scottish education.
Okay, I'm going to see if I can actually get any of the audience to ask their own questions here, because that's always fun. Zoe, you're saying, oh my God, I thought I could just hide in this thing and not have to. Can you put your video on, Zoe? You had a question for Audrey. Come on. Yeah. Hello there. Yeah, on you go.
Hi. I did put it in the chat. I'd actually put two questions. One was to Ross and one was to Audrey. I guess the question starting for Audrey would be, one, it's a bit worrying that we're 2 weeks to vote and you've got no policies. So when are you planning to release them, if you are? And the second point is, you said, or you mentioned, I believe, about the fact that the 9 to 5 working hours that a lot of people have don't fit childcare, which is 100% true. But Reform have come out and said that they want to scrap working from home, which a lot of parents find vital and completely reliant on to be able to make the hours work so they can pick up their kids. So how does that work? Because that just seems like a bit of a contradiction to me.
Well, thanks for your question, Zoe. First of all, in terms of the manifesto, I simply will not sit here and make you promises that I can't keep. Can't answer that question for you because I'm not in control of it. What I can reassure you is that it is a work in progress, and I am as hopeful as you that it will be delivered as soon as possible before the election. But it's not something that we're prepared to just jump on and rush. And again, I'll reiterate, make promises that we simply can't keep, because that's what we're trying to not be about. We're trying to make sure that what we've got in place is deliverable, which is a bit different from what we've been seeing over the SNP's terms. In terms of working from home, Reform's focus is about getting the economy moving again and, making work pay. It's not about punishing parents or removing the flexibility that families rely on. But I do have to say as well, that flexibility hasn't always been there, and families have managed for decades. I actually completely agree with you that flexibility for parents is vital. Everybody's talking about their kids. My kids are grown up now. I'm at the grandkid stage. So my wee grandkid, she's only 1, and I've got one at 4 who's due to start school now. And I have to say, she's quite advanced in her years. She's really old. She's already writing and partially reading and, getting her alphabet and things. So, and we did that through play. So we completely support the play-based system that people are talking about as well. I'll just get that in just now. But it's exactly, the problem with the current childcare system is that it's built around fixed hours and not real life. So if a parent needs to work from home to make childcare work. I think that just confirms how broken the system is, because we didn't always have the option to work from home. So as I said, it's a work in progress, and it's things that we have to look at. There are many, many things to look at. It's not something we're prepared to just jump in and pull, you know, a number out of a hat and say, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it. It's something that we really want to get right. And it's really interesting listening to the other candidates tonight as well and what they're putting across. Sitting here making my notes, because that's things that we will go on to discuss as well. I think there's a bit of confusion as to what the actual kindergarten model will look like. You know, we have to invest in staff the way Finland do. Finland don't, you know, it's not just about delaying the age, it's about really investing and supporting the staff who are there to deliver and making sure we've got enough staff, because I think the Finland model, there's, you know, the ratios and things are different from here. So all of that has to be considered. Again, it's about not making promises that we can't keep, Zoe, which is why there's a wee delay on it to get it right.
Right. I mean, that is what we kind of expect politicians to do, though, you know, do the maths. Having done a lot of research about Finland, you're right. You know, it does. The price that the average parent pays for a month of childcare, full-time childcare, that can be delivered on a shift basis is between £109 a month for the first child, for the second child, and £269 for the first. You basically pay more for your first child, and then it gets scaled back, so you pay less subsequently. And that cost, that's per month, right? I think the average cost at the moment can be up to £1,200 a month in Edinburgh. So that's like, whoa, so different. And that cost that I've just outlined there, that represents a tenth of the actual cost. So the Finnish government is picking up 9/10. You know, that's a lot of money. And that's why I'm wondering if people, first of all, think that a kindergarten stage with a later school starting age is what they would like to go for, but it's a bit scary on the financial front, or whether there's still a debate about the worth of that kind of, you know, whether it's better to have kids basically starting school at 5 and reading and writing. Has anyone got a comment to make about the reading and writing side of it? Because some people have mentioned that. Is it important that kids at 5 are reading and writing? Does anyone think it is?
I'm happy to chip in slightly, Leslie, on that, because this is one of the challenges about one of the challenges to the play-based learning scheme, and it's also one of the challenges to when reading is taught at P1, and that offer of effectively saying, do you want to postpone your child's start of P1 for 1 year, which a significant number of parents look at and many take up because they think it is right for their child. And then those children that do start at P1 are then into an almost automated system of how they learn throughout P1 from that summer term up until Christmas, so that they're effectively starting their reading in the new year. And that is really challenging when children miss that for whatever reason, disengagement, fear of school, because the catch-up facilities don't exist. And some children are rightly not ready to do that at that age. And that's why, again, going back to the transitions and going back about meeting the children where they actually are at their developmental stage. Now, potentially delaying that until 6, 7 is too long, because we've heard about children who, you know, and not insignificant number of children who actually come in at P1 already able to read because parents are active in that way. So it is about dealing with the flexibility of that situation. And one of the challenges that I think we have in Scotland in P1 is that structure of when the reading takes place, that it is set. And if a child misses that, the catch-up is really difficult. And that's the difference between applying chronological age pedagogy and actually pedagogy of where those individual children are. And that is a challenge that we have to address.
Okay. Fulton?
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. I hate to do this because I've gone very well with Martin, but I totally disagree with his analysis there. I think actually the reading and writing aspect, when it's brought into the kindergarten debate, is a wee bit of a red herring once that aspect has been researched. I understand when maybe somebody hears about it for the first time, they think, oh, where will my child will be with reading and writing? But actually, all the evidence from around the world, as far as I can tell, and if somebody wants to come out and contradict that's absolutely fine. But as far as I've been able to tell, is that actually a play-based approach, a kindergarten approach, supports the traditional learning skills that we would talk about there, such as reading and writing, and actually supports it in a much better way and in a much more equitable way as well, so that actually all children are learning it in a way that is natural to them to learn. And it takes that sort of competitive edge out of it. And actually, there is no evidence at all that states that have kindergarten are behind the UK countries in reading and writing in any way. In fact, there's actually evidence to suggest that they are ahead and that they get better outcomes. So, as a Hustings, Martin, but sorry to do that. I totally disagree.
Sorry,
on that.
Fulton, I wasn't. Sorry, my apologies if it came out. I'm not talking about that is the effect of a kindergarten system. What I'm saying is that is the effect of P1 at the minute in our educational system. If a young person misses that first term of P1, they are behind in their reading because of
Martin,
the formulaic way it's done.
What I was trying to ask you was, in more general terms, is it important that kids should be reading and writing at the age of 5? Because at the moment it seems that it is. And that perhaps that's one of the totemic differences that there is between Scotland and pretty much the rest of the world, actually, when it comes to numbers. But let Andy have a go. Andy?
I actually think Thomas was ahead of me if we're doing it in order.
Okay, well, he's letting you fire away. Worry not, Thomas will get in there.
Okay, well, thanks very much. I think that it seems like there's a lot of confusion going on about what play-based learning actually means, because play-based learning effectively is a form of academic learning. It's just much more informal. So children learn, for example, numeracy through playing shop and doing the money and the change and that way. And it's just a much less formal, seated at desks way of learning. And I think that's a much more fundamentally better way to teach children. It's better because it's the way children enjoy learning a lot more. It's better because it's much more holistic in the way that they actually learn. And it's better because it's much more individualized and personalized. Children learn on their own terms rather than all having to learn in a particular way. And that's why I think we can't talk about introducing play-based learning without talking about removing the testing of kids, because having those tests mean every child is taught to the test. There is always that centralized curriculum that's forcing every kid in a classroom to do exactly the same thing. So I think if we're talking about play-based learning, we need to be clear about what it is. It's not an alternative to learning. It's a form of learning.
Can I then ask everybody, would people withdraw, for example, the test at 5 particularly?
Absolutely.
So who wouldn't? Well, Thomas, you're not nodding, so on you go.
Yeah, our manifesto sets out our position that we would have regular check-ins with pupils in P1, P4 and S1. My own personal opinion is that they should be not formal testing as we know it. We should be seeing where our children are at in terms of their literacy and numeracy skills in order to address the issues. But I'm quite pleased that Andy went before me, because actually he said exactly what I wanted to say. Play-based learning is not that you don't do reading or writing. You learn through shop. My daughter learns her French through music. Arts, you learn a lot of things in the outdoors that you don't have to sit and read a book to learn them. And actually certain pupils embrace that, but it actually depends on the child. My eldest daughter's fluent in 4 languages and could write and read at the age of 2 and 3, but that's her particular style, whereas my middle child is very different. She's slightly less advanced but is also better in other areas. So it's allowing children to be children and to explore the outdoors, explore who they are, because ultimately you can't get somebody to succeed in formal academic education if they aren't grounded in their own emotional well-being. And that's the point of play-based learning, to get everyone to the same point. The point that Fulton made about equity is completely right. So sorry, I'll leave it at that.
So you personally would scrap the test at 5, Thomas?
I personally would scrap the test at 5.
Okay, and Fulton?
Yeah, I'm quite happy to say again, and it's already been mentioned that I'm it's on a recorded hustings, but I've been an outspoken critic of testing at P1. The one thing that I would say is that, there's quite a lot of, talk about that it's testing at P1. And as I said, I've got 2 kids that have already been through that now, and one who'll be P1 next year. And my own experience in that, through talking to constituents, friends, and others, obviously get friends with kids at the same time, is that the tests that are in place aren't, as formalised and rigid as I'm sure everybody on these calls, this call will know, or certainly not in North Lanarkshire, the experience that I've had. Of course, I can't speak for Scotland. Then maybe they're sometimes presented to be in a sort of media fashion, if you like, Leslie, if you don't mind me using that phrase. And certainly I've never found that although I'm totally against them, I've never found that my kids or any of their classmates or anything like that have felt any stress or anything to do with the tests. That all said, I just don't think they should exist at all. I don't think that it's one of these things that you can make better, you can make less intensive. That you should make less intensive. I think that is what's happening. I think that schools are adapting, local authorities are adapting. They're trying to work to the Scottish Government's policies, and they aren't that formalised for P1 children. But they just really shouldn't be happening. And I don't mind saying that could be seen as quite strong, but I do think that we should take the opportunity early, and this next parliamentary session, hopefully under an SNP government again, to get rid of them, rather than trying to dilute them. They should just go.
Right, Ross.
Thanks very much. I said in my opening that the Greens would scrap the SNSAs, these standardised tests, and to be clear, we wouldn't just do it for primary 1, we would scrap them full stop. So they're P1, P4, P7 and S3 at the moment. We don't think that they provide valuable data. There's a reason every teaching union in Scotland wants to see them scrapped. If we want to know about the overall performance of our school system, then we can do surveys. We could bring back the Scottish Survey of Literacy and Numeracy, the SSLN. We used to do that. It was a survey, it was a sample that was done basically, so it wasn't about testing individual young people, it was getting a representative sample of them, so it was much less stressful for them. They knew that they were not individually being judged and assessed, they were just helping us figure out what was happening in the system, rather than this every single young person approach, because the alleged value of assessing all young people through these standardized tests is that, as well as getting that system level data, you know what's going on for that individual child. My answer to that, and the Greens' answer to that, is could we please just trust our teachers? We set some of the highest standards in the world before you can actually stand in front of a class and be a teacher in Scotland. We should trust the professional judgment of our teachers when it comes to individual children in their schools. If we scrap these tests, we would also save about £6 million a year that we could put into all the other stuff that we want to do. These are a commercial product that we have to buy. They're not even providing us with useful data. And they add a huge amount of workload on, because there's the reporting for the test, then there's the extra reporting the school senior management wants, then there's the extra reporting that the council wants, and there's sometimes extra on top of that. The test itself takes up a bit of time and it's not great. All the additional reporting on top of it is a big part of the workload crisis that we've got for teachers in Scotland right now.
At the risk of sort of editorialising somewhat, I mean, again, having looked at how it works in Finland, actually the teachers' union in 1973 decided that they would require all primary teachers to have master's degrees. And there was a kind of deal done back then so that actually, if they did become that qualified, there would be almost no external supervision of them. And that was the deal. Pasi Selberg, who is the expert, says it in the film, that was the game changer, because the teachers were so well qualified that there was no need to be basically overseeing and constantly checking and all that oversight. And if you're talking about saving money, Ross, my God, the amount of money we spend checking on people as to whether or not they're capable is unbelievable. And that's the biggest difference with the way things work there.
And so we paved that way, Leslie, with chartered teacher status here in Scotland, which was then pulled and sidelined and lost, where we would, by this time, had it carried on, have master's class teachers who were doing the empathetic support of new teachers without the all of the form filling and box ticking that Ross is talking about. we set off down that path, and this government stopped that. And this is one of the challenges that we find ourselves in.
Well, it would be interesting too, because I mean, there was a kind of coalition within Finland of almost all the parties who agreed on this, and so that's 1973. That's 50 years. Apparently, there's been 30 changes of government, and that hasn't changed. So, you know, I think everybody's hopeful that you guys that have got so much in common would be able to do something in the next parliament, albeit I realise sometimes your parties are not 100% with you.
And we had that coalition over curriculum for excellence and the amendments that came way back in, where were we, 2001, 2002.
Yep. Cameron, are you there within our midst? You've got a question that's a bit different from the ones we've looked at so far. Are you there, Cameron?
I am. I don't have the best service where I am, so I can try, but if I drop out, we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
I guess what I put forward is that I co-run a social enterprise that's a childcare provider, and we're quite fortunate to run in 3 council areas that pay in the kind of mid to top of the league tables in terms of funded rate. But I think a few of you have mentioned when you were talking about how, you know, councils are under pressure, budgets are being cut, but there exists currently a postcode lottery of where you operate in terms of how much of the portion of the funded rate you currently get to operate a private earlier establishment. And all my settings are above national standard. I can document that our employment turnover has decreased year on year for the past 4 years. All these kind of things that are against what people are saying is happening in the early years right now. But the thing that's holding us back is if we got the top of the league table in terms of funded rate at all our settings, we could compete with councils to pay better wages. We could fund more qualifications. We could lower our ratios internally for what we're doing. We could invest in our sites, you know, and all these things are what we're talking about. We want better outcomes for children and staff working in early years. But with councils under pressure and the system set up the way it is, you know, people mentioned about some of the cross-boundary placement things. It's in the interest of the councils to keep the funding for themselves because they're trying to plug gaps. But can any of you speak to how ways you can see that being reformed moving forward? Because in my opinion, a lot of the funding is there. It's just not all getting to childcare.
Does anyone want to handle that? Okay, Andy?
Yeah, thanks.
Hang on a minute. Scott Thomas is always just in after you, so let's just change the order this time. Thomas.
Go on, Thomas. Sorry, I stole your thunder last time. Go for it.
Thanks, Andy. I appreciate it. Cameron's absolutely right. We've heard consistently. In fact, I was watching in preparation the Upstart Hustings for 2021, and this was an issue that Willie Rennie spoke to about at length and has been out all over this issue as well. The challenges the PVI sector are facing are really quite stark. Recruitment and retention is a constant issue. Staff don't stay around very long because, frankly, they get paid more in the council state sector, which feeds down to the children in terms of they're not getting the stability of the experience that they deserve. And I just feel that we haven't quite grasped the scale of the challenges yet. In terms of funding following the child, our policy would be not to give the money, as it were, to local authorities to then distribute. It would be to give the funding to the institutions the child's attending directly. And we think that would help with some of the issues in terms of the councils holding on to that money. So Cameron's absolutely right. Can I just ask you,
I can be very slow on money things, right? But who's giving the money to which institution? I mean, who?
Sorry, I'll just consult my policy proposal document. I'm not particularly good on money either, but our policy would be the public funding flows directly to the setting or the institution attended by the child. We would create
it's a lot of settings, isn't it? How can you manage to have? I mean, how many nurseries are there in Scotland? There must be thousands.
Yes, there are a lot, but we would essentially
create individual funding arrangements. But
no, you would go through. You would create a new body. So the body we proposed
Lordy,
Scottish Education Funding Council.
You got another quango.
Well, that'd be one quango compared to 32 local authorities, each doing things differently. in fairness, if you did it that way. So that would ensure, in our eyes, that the money followed the child. That's my answer to the question.
I'm obviously so hopelessly biased. I'm just, there's, as my mother would say, hung for a sheep is a lamb. If you're coming back to the Finland thing, they have 330 councils for the same population as us. And they run this stuff, so it's funny how we don't seem to be able to do local. Anyway, I'm editorializing heavily and I apologize. Andy, you were next.
Yeah, thank you. And Thomas, thanks for referencing Willie Rennie as well. He's been amazing on this. And I think he was actually scheduled to do this, but unfortunately you drew the short straw and you got me instead. So I think, Cameron, I feel your pain. As I say, I briefly ran a childcare centre or a preschool myself. And the answer is very simple, is the Lib Dems in our manifesto, we want to have more fairer rates for PVI providers, because nobody benefits if these PVIs are going bust. If places like yours, Cameron, are struggling, nobody benefits at all. So we want to make sure that you're getting fair rates so that you can actually cover those delivery costs that you've got. And we also have,
since I was niggly with Thomas, niggly with you, how is that mechanism going to work? Because at the moment, the suggestion is if you give it to councils, they just go, thank you, and it doesn't reach the private providers.
I mean, we're still going through councils. We're still the Lib Dems, so we still believe in local democracy. So we're still going through the councils. But I think ultimately, I mean, a lot of this can be attributed to central government cutting of council budgets as well. I think that's an important factor. But we still think councils are the best mechanism to offer this.
Right. Forgive me for leaping in, but weirdly, we have only got 7 minutes left. No. Ross.
Thanks. So we also think that this should be provided by councils. I mean, we very much agree with what you were saying a moment ago, Ezzy, though, that at the moment, though, we've got 32 regional service delivery bodies. They're not local government, they're not local, and they can barely do any governing, but they should be the bodies that do this. That's why we know that fundamentally the key thing that we need to do to fix the situation with councils is to scrap and replace the council tax with something that actually works. In most European countries, local government raises about half of its own revenue. In Scotland, the council tax raises less than 20%, and it's based on property values from before I was born. So if we want to resource this properly, then we do need to give councils the power to raise their own money, because there's a tricky balance here. Central government is funding this. Councils are the ones who are actually delivering it or passing on the funding to deliver it to the PVI sector. Councils are systematically underfunding your private and voluntary nurseries to their own advantage. So we can go one of two ways. We can either ring fence this much more tightly, or we can actually give councils the financial powers they need in other areas. Because councils aren't doing this because they have some ideological opposition to the PVI sector. They're doing it because they are absolutely skint, and they're trying to keep as much money as they possibly can to keep the show on the road for all the other services they need.
Okay, Ross, can I ask you then, one suggestion that's coming in the chat, and can I just apologise? It's impossible to actually have as many quick thinkers and talkers as there are in this panel and kind of weave in so many of the questions from the chat. But one is saying, what about the care inspectorate doing the money side of it?
It would transform them into a totally different body to the kind of body that they are now. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of millions of pounds and a whole new system. The funding should follow the child. We need a system that does that. I was in a nursery in Linlithgow last week who've been totally screwed, or families I met there have been screwed over by the cross-border placements in West Lothian, yanking that, I think, a couple of days' notice and leaving families in the lurch. We do need a solution to that so that the funding actually does follow the child. I think doing it through the care inspectorate would be like trying to insert a whole new body inside the care inspectorate that's actually much bigger than the existing inspectorate, and I'd be worried it would undermine the really important role that they have. There's also an element of don't be a referee and a player here. Having a body that's job it is to inspect, to make sure that the settings are safe, that there's good quality of service, etc. Having that separate from the body providing the funding is probably a good idea. There's an importance to having the inspectorates be quite independent. I like the creative thinking, though.
Right. I don't know if we blow up at 8:15 or what happens if we dematerialise or whatever, but there is one question that came in here beforehand. Let's just see if we can have quick answers from people on this. One is from Louise from Little Bugs in Sola. Following the expansion of funded hours and the growth of outdoor nurseries, will your party support and sustain outdoor provision as part of Scotland's education system? So outdoors in all of this, how important is it? Let's just hear from Thomas first of all, because it was, after all, Liz Smith from your party that got that private members bill through about at least a week in a kid's career. But we're looking at outdoor nurseries. What do you think of that?
Yes, in short. I think the longer a child spends outdoors, the more they learn about the world around us, learn their social connections too, exploring. You referenced Liz Smith. She finally got that bill through, which was a good thing. It took a long time to get through Parliament. So yeah, short answer, yes.
Fulton?
Yeah, Leslie, absolutely agree there. I think that the outdoor learning, particularly for our younger children, is tied into that play-based approach and to an eventual kindergarten phase. It really has to be an integral part of it. The nurseries in my constituency that I visit regularly, particularly actually the private ones, usually have really, really good outdoor facilities. In some cases, really good ones. One's actually got basically a forest attached to it. It's just by luck. Not every building's going to get that, but it's absolutely fantastic. But yeah, a lot of the council-run ones do too, but they often rely on parent councils and such like to get funding together and to do them up, or maybe, you know, if I can just use a phrase, a handyman that happens to be a dad or a granddad, or, you know, a mum or a grandmum of of one of the kids. I was out at a nursery recently where that was the case, where just a dad of one of the kids was also a builder and a joiner, and they came in and they done up a really good outdoor area for the children. So, you know, I think it needs to be more standard across the board.
Well, just to say that actually in Norway there is a thing called dugnad, which is exactly, it's almost a formal system where parents contribute in kind their skills to something, and it's a very standard thing, so that very often all the outdoor little huts and things like that for kids to have a little bit of shelter when they're outdoors, and the teepees and where they have their food and everything, those have been made by the parents everywhere. So it's more like, if you get that as a social idea, that everyone should be contributing something in addition to the taxes and all the rest of it. You know, this is a natural thing that people seem to just begin to do. Now, where are we, Martin?
I think absolutely, it's a simple answer, because just as play is a way of learning, being outdoors is a way of learning, and the ethos behind our forest schools for those nurseries that are exclusively outside produce some brilliantly empathetic children as they develop. So it is about recognizing the diversity that can exist within that environment of a young child's development that is right for them. Of course, there are some nurseries that are based in the centres of cities where outdoor play is very difficult. But similarly, they also have advantages about being able to take their children out to the museums and within the streets, obviously within safety. So it is allowing that imaginative, play-based, empathetic development that all of our young people need, because the more they experience it under 5, 6, 7 years old, the easier it is for them when they come to transitions later on in life.
Okay, Audrey?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. There's one not too far from home that I've spent a fair bit of time at to actually see it in progress, and it's just amazing. In terms of the physical and mental health of the kids, there's, you know, the stronger development, their confidence, the teachers actually reported that they found it really beneficial for the kids with assisted needs as well, because they were calmer, the fresh air seemed to have a better impact on them. The downside of it was last summer, our wee local nursery was set in fire. Their wee play garden was set in fire 3 times throughout the summer weeks, which was tragic. But I have to say the local services, such as our local men's shed, who are outstanding, they rebuilt the materials. I've led a fundraising campaign. It is a few £1,000s for them to replace the stuff. So, yep, absolutely, 110%. We would continue to support
Audrey,
outdoor learning. Yes.
Might you tickle this into Reform's manifesto at some point? I mean, it sounds like it's a forlorn hope for this election, but You know, is this something you can push?
Well, it's something that I can try, and I do intend to, absolutely, because
Right.
I've seen the evidence. You know, it's been evidence that it definitely is a beneficial thing. Yeah.
Right, for sure. Now, my brain's gone and I've forgotten who hasn't answered this question.
I think
Ross?
it's me. I think. Oh, sorry, Ross. Yeah, go ahead. You go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Andy. Yeah, as you would expect, the Greens are passionately in favour of outdoor education, and it's something that should be available through every setting. So we really strongly support forest schools and forest nurseries. They are overwhelmingly in the PVI sector, though. So that goes back to the discussion we've just been having. If we are systematically underfunding the PVI sector, then we're systematically underfunding forest schools. It shouldn't just be that particular setting that you can have outdoor education experiences in, though. Every ELC setting should be providing outdoor education, and that means supporting the staff so that they can do it. There's a particular skill set often for this kind of stuff. There's some really good courses that are available for it, but staff need the time to be able to go on those courses as part of their continued professional development. These settings need to be recruiting people who've got the dedicated specialist qualifications in the first place. If we want to do this, we need to mainstream it across all of our ELC settings. I love forest schools and forest nurseries. I love visiting them, but children who don't go into those particular settings shouldn't lose out on outdoor education experiences. They need it too. I've never met a member of staff who didn't want to make that experience available to the kids, but very often they're not given the resources they need. They're not given the opportunity to go and get the training that they really want to get to do this kind of stuff well.
Yeah, Andy?
Yeah, agreed. I think, again, not to be a sort of a pedant, but there is a difference between nature-based learning and just outdoor learning in general. Nothing breaks my heart more than when, like, my kids have been at school and it's been raining, so they've done indoor break time or indoor playtime. In Scotland, we seem like the only country that's consistently surprised by its own weather. And again, to provide with that comparison with the Nordic model, you look at the way they treat their cold and bad weather, is that they bundle the kids up and the kids play in it. I think that's something that I would love to see more of. An expectation that there is sort of a guarantee of outdoor play, even not just nature place play, but outdoor play every day for kids. So yeah, I absolutely support that. And Audrey, I did want to say on a point of information, the Reform Manifesto has been out for over a month now. So yeah, it's all out and it's all there, readable. So yeah, I just wanted to let you know. Thank you.
Yes, no, I'm very, very aware of that, but you will be aware that there's no childcare in it because that is still a work in progress.
Right, let's not play that song again. You've all contributed really well on this one, so thank you very much indeed for all of that. I mean, it does look like there is the possibility of a little bit of cross-party talk here, because you've actually all. I mean, this is one of the most reasonable conversations I've ever been involved in, actually, which is tremendous. So I can only hope that something manages to happen. I'm sorry to kind of keep dwelling this because I know it's difficult for you, Fulton, but it does. There was something, I can't remember who said at the very beginning about trying to bring parents along with the idea that you're moving away from the classic way that you can be confident your kid can get on in life, which has always been the 3 R's. And it's been the earlier you can get them into school, the sooner you can get the 3 R's going. All of that stuff is what has traditionally in Britain been how you guarantee your kid's going to get ahead. And if you're going to change that, you really need to kind of have a big public discourse about it, rather than maybe doing little, technical shifts at the back. And I just don't know that I think the public's way ahead, actually, because the parents are looking at their own kids and realizing through the kids, actually, exactly how they do learn. But I wonder if there would be any way to go for a citizens' assembly on this. I mean, Ross, you've talked about citizens' assemblies to try and reform the council tax. If there's some stumbling block thing here about childcare, is that a candidate for this? Would we citizens' assembly everything, I wonder? Well, Fulton, just go Fulton first, since I have been pointing at him.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right there. I think there's perhaps a perception that the parents or the public will not think it's a good idea. But funnily enough, I mean, and this is not any scientific, evaluation or anything like that, but I've never really found that to be the case to any great extent. I think that you're right, Leslie. I think the public are ahead of us with this. Yes, any government that brings it in, whether that's through, combination with other parties, as Ross mentioned earlier, or whatever the case might be, we'll need to test the public opinion on it, absolutely. But I think that we, playing about at the back, as you said earlier, it has actually been useful to an extent, because actually most areas and most schools now are doing some sort of, it's not exactly what we all in this call, or most of us in this call, want, but they are doing some sort of play-based, kindergarten-esque type of thing within their schools. So people are getting used to it. And I don't mind sharing this story. I've shared it with the guys at Upstart several times, so they've heard it. And my first experience of it was my second child, who's now in P4, and the school that my kids go to wrote out to say that we are going to be doing, for primary one from now on, we're going to be doing a play-based learning for the first year. So my older boy didn't get it. And we all get called down to the school to go over what that was, and it was very much about be play-based. They would be outside every day. There would be lots of, apart from the standardised testing need to take place, there'd be no tests, no homework, all that sort of stuff. So I was right up for it, and I felt that the vast majority of parents there were up for that. However, I was walking up the road with a parent who I know very well, and she said to me, "Not up for this at all. I'm going to be writing into the council, and I'm going to be complaining because my kid's going to be way behind my older child in reading and writing," some of the stuff that we've heard tonight. Within about 3 to 4 weeks, she came up to me, because I obviously had a debate back with her and saying, "No, that wouldn't be the case, trust me." And she said she couldn't be more of a fan or supporter of it, that it should just become, because she had seen her child come in happy, dirty some of the time, happy and learning really well. And she became an advocate for it overnight. So I do wonder, for the people who are still reluctant about it, is it about seeing it in practice? And maybe that, the changes that have been made that are getting within schools are helping to set us up for it. And perhaps actually just the fact that we've not brought it in before, this is by accident more than anything else. So I'm not going to claim any credit for this. But perhaps the fact that we've not brought it in quicker, and hopefully does come in the next parliamentary session, but the fact is local authorities have just been asked to do it a bit more, maybe actually lays the groundwork for when it does come in. And I actually don't think there'll be much public backlash at all. But again, that's not a scientific
right. I am seeing in the chat all sorts of people going off their heads with, this is such, not you, but that attitude that you're talking about is a Victorian attitude that just, needs to be challenged. And that, if you take that example of the parent that you spoke to and that incredible change in her child, it's like there's a whole other generation of children not having that little joyful moment every time you guys don't get your act together. Sorry to be blunt, but I mean, it is kind of important, and that is why we've all been involved with Upstart. So anyway, I will stop wagging the finger, start doing the plaudits. Thank you very much indeed, all of you. And sorry to all the chat people, but you figure a format out where we can do all of this and have all of you chatting. And let's hope you have whatever you wish for in terms of political results. And thank you very much for your time tonight.